such a mess. Look at the three words here. They all contain OUGH, but how are they pronounced? Tough, dough, cough. What the hell, right? Let's begin. I once read a book that says the word fish could very well be spelled GHOT. Why not? How is GH pronounced in tough? Tough. O is pronounced as in women. T is pronounced as in nation. So the word fish could very well be written as GHOT. As children, we are too dumb to question our teacher, the logic behind these spellings, and so we end up memorizing and learning to live with it rather than question. So adult learners of this language find it really hard to cope up with the mismatch between the spellings on the page and how they are supposed to pronounce. Why did this happen? Let's start. I don't mean to scare you with fancy symbols, but vowels can be classified based on pronunciation. There are these low vowels that are pronounced with the tongue at the lower part of the mouth, and there are these higher vowels that are pronounced with the tongue touching nearer the roof of the mouth, as in E, U. To remember better, the low vowels are the sounds that we produce when we are in pleasure, like ah, oh, and the high vowels are those that we produced when we are alarmed or tensed, like E, U. And the middle vowels are pronounced in such a way that the tongue is in between. Now, why did this happen? To do this, we have to go back in time. English spellings were standardized in around 1400s, but hardly any language remains the same over the span of hundreds of years, right? So from 1400s to 2017, it has been 600 years. And the only thing that is unchanging about language is that language changes, sounds change. So it's the sound changed that followed from the 1400s to the modern English that made our life hell. So what happened tragically was, although the sounds of the language changed, the spelling system which was standardized did not cope up with it, and it just remained static. And that's the reason why we pronounce in a way that is not exactly corresponding to what is actually on the page. Let's look at the Romans. The English alphabet, like many European languages, borrows from the Roman alphabet. And in the Roman alphabet, there are 5 vowels as in the English alphabet, but they are not pronounced exactly as the English letters. For example, the letter A is pronounced as A as in father. The letter E is pronounced A as in get. The letter I is pronounced E as in bit. And the letter O is pronounced as in node. And the letter U is pronounced as in put. So for the Roman tongue, it's not A, E, I, O, U, but A, E, O, U. So English borrowed this alphabet, but what it did after that is what is very important. There was something that happened to the English language which Wikipedia calls it the Great Vowel Shift, and scares you with all fancy words and symbols. But in essence, the Great Vowel Shift is a sound change in the vowels that happened starting from 1400 and ending at around 1600s. Historians of the English language, make it very dramatic, as though it all happened one fine day. But it was a gradual process. What is this Great Vowel Shift all about? It's about a series of sound changes that we will see. The first sound change that happened was, the high vowels E and U became diphthongs like OU and I. So we see that the letter E in the Roman alphabet is actually taught to you as I, right? But this was due to the Great Vowel Shift in the beginning process. E became I and U became OU. Let's look at some examples. Now the vowels I and OU are called diphthongs because they are actually 2 vowels in succession. Let's consider the following words: mouse, house, arouse, out, stout. Originally, they were pronounced oo, like moose whose, arus, oot, and stoot. In the first stage of the great vowel shift, what happened was the vowel oo became a diphthong ow. So, whose became house and moose became mouse. And also, the long vowel e became an I. And we have mice, surprise, rice, kind, mind, bite, tide, ride, glide, night, delight, fight, instead of meese, surprise, reese, kind, mind, beat, deed, read, and so on. So, we now have the high vowels becoming diphthongs, but does it stop here? No. Politics happens in languages also. As the higher vowels become diphthongs, it creates a power vacuum in the English language where there are no more high vowels. So, the middle vowels are now greedy and are competing to take their place, right? So now what we observe is the middle vowels A and O became E and U. This is the second stage of the great vowel shift. So the middle vowels now become high. Now the A becoming E is very, very obvious that the Roman A is actually taught to you as E, right? But I told you it's E in English but A in Rome. And O also becoming U is not surprising. Take look at these examples. Food, good, mood, boot, root, loot, loom, room, broom, right? But originally they were all O. Food was pronounced ford. Good was pronounced god. Root was pronounced rot. Interestingly, the double O sequence became very much associated with U, that even when English borrowed from other languages, like for example the Hindi, it borrowed loot, it was rendered as L-O-O-T rather than L-U-T. Very funny, right? So, O becoming U is the second stage of this great vowel shift. The only word that reverted back to its original pronunciation was the word blood, which we still pronounced as blood and not blood. And also, the middle vowel A became E. So we have sheep, creep, weep, breed, greed, beat, meat, grease, breeze, instead of shap, crepe, wep, bread, great, bait, and so on. So now, the middle vowels A and O become high, which are E and U. Now, the politics continues. Now there's a vacuum in the middle vowel, and we have the lower vowels competing to take its place. So what happens? We all know these vowels, EA and OA, but originally they were pronounced very much differently. The silent symbol is standing for the pronunciation as in dress, and OA symbol is like standing for the pronunciation So now we have becoming A and becoming O. And in some stages, the converted A becomes further high and becomes E. Example, boat, goat, loaf, loan, moan, roam. Originally, they were pronounced as in cart. But, cart became boat, became O. And originally, we had as in dress, but now became reap, leap, meat, treat, repeat, heat, great, bread, spread. So in some vowels like great, bread, spread, we have the sound change from a to a. But in some other words like treat, repeat, heat, reap, leap, meat, we have the a further being raised up to e. So we have meat. So M-E-E-T meat and M-E-A-T meat were originally not homophones. It is due to this great vowel shift of a silent going to E and A going to E that made the word meat and meat as homophones. So this is another stage of the great vowel shift. Does it stop? No. We have the lowest vowel A, which now raises its standard. Like the word A was as in name, it was not name. Name become name. Shame become shame. Lame became lame. Blame, game, tame, came, frame, slate. So the A became an A. which we saw here, A as in dress. So in summary, this is the great vowel shift. The high vowels become diphthongs, the middle became high, and then the lower middle became middle, and the low became lower middle. So what are the reasons for this great vowel shift? There are many reasons cited, but the two reasons that historians agree upon is the French and the bubonic plague that caused the Black Death. Increasing amount of French loanwords and the French influence on the war with France are some of the reasons that historians cite as to why this vowel shift happened. And another reason why this shift happened, according to historians, is that the bubonic plague caused a large migration of people from towards the south, and hence mixing up of dialects happened, and hence pronunciations screwed up. And we must be very careful. In those days, there were no grammar classes or schools where people could be taught how to pronounce words correctly, and not many people were literate either. The dream of 100% literacy is still ideal to be realized. So on those days, when all people knew about the language was how their family members and their neighbors talked, there was not a standard to regulate pronunciation, and hence, if many people hear a different sound, they will also start saying the same. How do you know about this? So, we know about the great vowel shift. We never know exactly the recordings of the people who pronounced these words, right? Then how do we, say for sure that, people were pronouncing some way and then shifted? The beautiful thing about this is that there was this guy called John Hart, who Wikipedia claims is a spelling reformer. We can sympathize with him now. John Hart was, around 1574, he died. He was very concerned about, the spelling remaining the same and the pronunciations shifting bizarrely. He wanted to change and modify the alphabet of the English language so that it became very phonemic, such that the words are pronounced exactly as they were written. But as we see, unfortunately, his dream is not even realized now, even now, after hundreds of years have passed. The great vowel shift started from Chaucer around 1400s and ended at Shakespeare around 1600s. Another main source of evidence which historians have is poetry. We all know poets, write poems such that the words at the end, at each line, rhyme, right? So based on the rhyming scheme of the words, we can infer the pronunciation such that, to match the words rhyming. So based on poetry and the work of John Hart, we know about this great vowel shift, and it changed tremendously the way we pronounce the English language. But unfortunately, the spelling system which was standardized around the time when this shift only mildly begun was frozen, and that's the reason why people don't speak as they write in the English language. Thank you for listening.